So, we've gone through a lot recently. We moved into a new place with two less partners than we had before. Thought we were going to be homeless, wasn't homeless, decided to go full face into YouTube and Twitch content while also working on our mental health. All within the past month or so. Um, we're working on our mental health so we can have better relationships because we're not good at them at all. Even just friendships, and that's a very charitable way to put it. But this video isn't about beating ourselves up. It's about, well, it's a vlog about us, or at least one of us, and how we see the world and how we want to make content, or why we want to make content. Even though we already have a video about why we want to make content, or at least why we are upfront about like being a baby fur and stuff, while also making like leftist and video game analysis, I guess, content. But this video, I guess, has a lot more heart to it. Like, it was kind of hard to write. But we're also trying to limit our unscripted content outside of Let's Plays and stuff, and some parts of videos like the one you're watching right now. This vlog is something, or this kind of vlog is something we're gonna try to keep going with on a regular basis, and keep up with our like regular content. The point is to get some word vomit out, maybe relay it to something that's been on our minds while we've been editing our regular video during the week, and try our muscles at some low stress editing. Since our videos on this channel were our first real attempt at video editing in a while, and we know it's not the best, but practice makes perfect. And if we don't practice, we might just stop doing it altogether. Plus, editing stuff no one will see is a surefire way not to finish, because we have this weird superpower right now in that we can squeeze out enough executive function to edit a video, but only if we intend to post it, but nothing else. Also, editing keeps the sadness away better than drugs. These vlogs won't always be this personal, but they will be low effort productions compared to our regular content, so be warned. The unscripted part. Basically, we're about to talk about how we got radicalized to the left, specifically, and something we call the BreadTube black pill, even though we don't know if anyone else has said anything along the lines of what we're about to say, but like it's something that's been observed outside of maybe not our own literal experience, because we have heard other people talking about it, but it's not just something we observed in ourselves. It's something that has been told to us by other leftists who we value, whose opinions we value. So like, we've only been a leftist for a little bit, I mean years, but still, like when we first like started to transition, we literally were like, why are so many people who are trans communists? I don't want to be a communist just because I'm trans. And so we were like basically just avoiding it for a while, even though obviously like we thought that like we and other marginalized people should have rights. But we were definitely like a liberal for the longest time, and like definitely knew that there was like more left you could be, but like didn't really see a point in it, since we didn't want to get into politics or anything, and it's like, we don't want to be a politician, what does it matter? And while being trans, living has been much harder, obviously, and we realized that part of the reason why a lot of not just like LGBT plus people, but just a lot of marginalized people, especially when you like cross identities that are marginalized, or even just like sometimes you'll see more in smaller communities, like the fur community, because like when you have things kind of doubling on, like your oppression, I guess, or your repression, depending on like what things are interacting, like are that much harder, and like I guess it pushes you farther to be like, oh wow, the status quo actually like hates me more so than like it already would based on one thing. And like that sounds like really basic to some people, but like especially like if you live in America and you've been told like, you know, all you have to do is like work hard regardless of like your status and you'll be okay, and then you start to realize after time and time again that like it's not actually like merit based, and that like the system is made for people to suffer, and like that's kind of by design. But like growing up, like even as marginalized as we are growing up in America for the longest time, we were also just like, well, yeah, the world just works that way. And thinking that, you know, like, oh yeah, there should totally be more government assistance programs, and there totally should be like, you know, like less racist and homophobic and xenophobic and like anything else you can think of people. But like, I was like, what are you gonna do? Well, at the same time, like even when we were younger, we were like interested in protesting and stuff like that, but didn't do it much. But then, while working as a canvasser, trying to spread awareness about LGBT rights, we just kind of like was seeing a lot of like direct hate, not even based on like who I was as a person or who we were as a person, but like for the thing that we were like saying should happen, of like LGBT plus people having more rights. And like there were we had straight cis male coworkers who like sometimes would like do some would do really well, you know, if they were clean cut and like, you know, normal well-to-do white guy. But like anything that was like alternative also sometimes, especially because of what it was assumed to at the very least be queer, and sometimes based on that they would get harassed, and it was just so weird. But it wasn't even that. We went on a work trip, and literally our boss had been like, hey, I love ContraPoints, after another coworker had said like weeks ago, yeah, you should really watch ContraPoints. And I was just like, who is this person? And like while on this work trip and being really lonely because we were really codependent, I guess technically still are, and like really wasn't doing well being a week away from our partner, and was like not coping well and staying up all night watching YouTube videos. It was like, I guess I'll watch ContraPoints, and watch like hours of her content, and that's like kind of started me in the little bread tube circuit, and that was like maybe 2 years ago now. And like we're like really media obsessive, because of it being kind of what's the word, it's like as an autistic person, it's something we obsess over. Special interest, there it is. Like video games and anime and stuff like that has always been part of our special interest, and so like we always loved talking to people about it. So especially when like stuff crossed over like that, and talking about like anime, even jokingly, like Philosophy Tube even did a like a April Fool's Day video about like Tenshi Muyo, and that was like really funny, and it was like really cool to see that like, you know, you could be like, you know, an anarchist even, and also, you know, like stuff that is made by this like stupid evil capitalist hierarchy or whatever. And like because of like being the type of person who like tends to, when you like a YouTuber, just watch all of their freaking content in a very short amount of time, it was just like, okay, well now I'm watching ContraPoints every week or whatever, or sorry, not every week, but whenever the videos come out. And then it's like, but now I need more leftist content. And just like, you know, like any media machine, just like watching like Toonami, and it's like branching out into a whole bunch of other anime, watching one leftist branch me out into a whole bunch of other leftists. I just mentioned Philosophy Tube. There was also Thought Slime and The Radical Reviewer, and other than ContraPoints, at least right now, we still watch most of like what's probably considered the core of BreadTube. But like also because of our anti-socialness, we started getting more and more online, and weirdly ended up on Twitter a lot, and we're still on Twitter a lot. We're chiefly on Twitter, but you know, there's just that whole thing about the mobs or whatever, and like all the harassment that happens on Twitter, which it does. We definitely admit that it does. But also, we found ourselves with one foot eating up this content and agreeing that, you know, people should be leftists and people should be trying more, while also not really doing anything in terms of our leftist beliefs, musing about them, things that we could do, but also just not doing them. And then had this other foot in hearing and seeing and being able to read all of this, at least from some of the people that we follow most of the time, if not very valid criticism of content made by people that we watched, or at the very least, something that was like the conversation that sprung from it, like also was something that kind of exposed something or created a conversation that had a context more than like when a YouTuber makes a video sometimes about like the media's or the Twitter criticisms and harassment that they got don't always include. I mean, you can't include every single thing, obviously, but it even got to the point of like knowing people or seeing people on our timeline on a regular basis who sometimes would be screen capped in videos by people saying like, these are some comments that I wanted to like say something about, or even once hearing about like, oh yes, it was so weird getting all this criticism from like these anime and like furry avatars, and it's just like, most of my friends on Twitter have, if not anime or furry avatars, drawn ones, or like something like really not like vanilla Tumblr, basically, and like our icon isn't any better in that regard. So like it felt like we had like this fractured identity about it, and like was like, oh, well, I have this parasocial relationship with these content creators and really want to believe them all the time blindly, but then I also have people that I technically also, to varying degrees, either like actually talked to, or most of the time had a parasocial relationship that didn't necessarily have to be a parasocial relationship, but being so afraid to talk to people that was like basically defaulting into one and being like, wow, they're saying some really interesting things. And it's like having two friends and like them fighting and you're not exactly sure which side you want to be on because you don't want to lose either of them. And I think that's why we had a YouTube channel before that was like mostly vanilla. We didn't talk about kink stuff. We didn't talk about or like acknowledge it or whatever for the longest time. And I didn't do well enough to monetize, but like it sated our hunger for the whole like getting likes or getting like views or whatever, even though it wasn't enough to like necessarily be anything. It was just at least a little satisfying to our ego. But all we did was make content that like we thought people wanted, like that would get clicks just because of what it was. Like we would buy video games, sometimes that we didn't even have consoles for yet, to do unboxings, knowing that we wouldn't be able to play it for such a long time, even though like maybe we wanted the console. It's like, we're poor, this is not a thing that we can have right now, but let's waste money on stuff that we can like show unboxings for and get people to care about us, apparently. And like the more we got into leftism, the less we made content for that channel, and the more we just kind of got bitter about not being fully okay with ourselves enough to do the stuff that we wanted to. So now we have a channel that we, even though we're not showing our face, like, are being pretty visible about the stuff that like we believe and that is kind of like part of like what we think is relevant in our identity to talk about certain things. And again, that probably sounds weird in terms of the like furry and like age play part of like stuff, but like there's a lot of furries who are leftists, which means there's also a lot of baby furries who are leftists, and there's also a lot of people in both of those groups who are disabled, maybe, or are neurodivergent, and like, just like, you know, something being sex positive and kink positive, and those things do overlap with some of those things, not necessarily furry. Although, like, the furry community is a very sex positive community, like, some of these things like overlap for us, and it was like super important. And then we decided, hey, what if we were like an anarchist baby fur YouTube channel that also talked about video games? And I was like, that sounds so cringeworthy. But then I was like, wait, cringe is dead. Got off track because the bread to black pill part was what stopped us from doing a lot of things, not just YouTube content, not just like even having a job, because we eventually stopped having a job for a very long time. We kind of were just like very self-defeatist, and not to lose any irony, not dissimilar to ContraPoints talking about the incel black pill. There's some catastrophizing that can happen, especially when you have a lot of marginalized identities and you go, oh snap, capitalism is a death cult, or capitalism hates me. And it's like, I can't do anything to change it. I can't do anything to help another person. I'm powerless. And everything is going bad. The sky is falling. Climate crisis. Like, we're all on borrowed time. We're basically in the apocalypse. Like, it was so easy to be like, oh, I'm so woke, and also be like, oh, there's no point in even trying. And in our scripted part, we're also going to talk about how like we like would talk to people who we were friends with or who we knew about like leftist stuff, and they were already like, if not like fully like oh yeah, I'm like a socialist or anarchist or a communist. Like, they were definitely like, no, like the things that are happening is bad, and it's not just because of who happens to be in power right now. And it was like going to protest when like a friend asked, but never actually like looking into it ourselves. And like, part of the reason we're making a YouTube channel and talk about all this stuff at the same time is also like connect those dots and be like, you can like these things and also want things to change. And that like the class solidarity and stuff like that also means like, like trying to consolidate as much community as you can with like-minded enough people to affect change, because no one can do anything alone. And even though YouTube is a small part of that thing, or like making content is a small part of that thing, we want to like kind of shake off this feeling of like what we call or what we've heard other people call the like bread to black pill, or just like sadness based on the like political climate right now, or being a marginalized person, and like kind of giving up hope of just like even if you already kind of agree with like some of the things that we're saying, like we also just wanted people to know that like we don't have to necessarily be defeatist, like the fight's not over yet. And that's what our video next week is about as well. Sorry, next week? Tomorrow. So we rambled a little bit, but now the scripted part. The internet really messed us up. Um, Mostly gonna talk from I right now because of uh, I'm a particular person speaking in the system, speaking from my perspective on our life. Um, you don't usually hear um, one of us talking in a video using so much I. But anyway, my thoughts are in tweet form sometimes. Like the internet really messed me up, and it's kind of like affected how I think. For almost the entire time I've been on the internet, I thought if I creeped, didn't comment, didn't interact, that would be insulated in some way. If I didn't give in to anger or try at someone or troll someone, that would be like better than the people who did, intrinsically. It was kind of like the glass screen was still separating me from like actual social interaction with people online. We were having like a parasocial relationship with the rest of the internet. It was somewhere in between like TV and a video game. No real consequences. If I didn't announce my presence, then I was invisible. I just didn't speak. But growing up, there was this yearning for a lot of things, and like the internet is a great escape into, you know, not being abused or not living in a world that gives you a lot of stuff to manage to survive. And we didn't even know how deep that yearning was, because like being queer and liking like diapers and hentai and anime and video games, it was all just kind of like inconvenient to be so marginalized, because like being black and poor and not athletic and not very sociable, it was kind of a death sentence, because if you can't have a way to like get money, assume capital, then you die, obviously. Living in capitalism is bad. Our one saving grace is that the one saving grace was being smart. My family in the world kind of said that my intelligence was the only thing that could lead to me having a decent life. Just going to college was pretty much determined if I was going to get a scholarship, which it was assumed I was going to get because I'm smart and because others had done it before. So how can I say that I can't do it? It's America. And like the college application process probably put feelings in me that later would stir radicalization when I did go to BreadTube. But as smart as I was, I failed a lot because of a lot of issues, but chiefly among them because I had undiagnosed autism. And my family refused to acknowledge it because they knew that the system we were in would make things even harder for me. They didn't want me to be disabled and black, so they denied it, and I could math really well because autism doesn't look the exact same in all folks, and some issues get ignored or explained away if the person isn't a disruption to a learning environment. And so I didn't actually start to figure out that I was autistic until like my early 20s, and I had gone so long looking at my differences only personality quirks, like my obsessions were hobbies, and like my first 12 years of being alive, I cried almost every day, but that was actually like autistic meltdowns happening daily from sensory overload or like abuse. But also, that was explained away by like, oh, this person is just weak and feminine, which was like totally something that was like something my family said, because I don't know how you got this far in a video without realizing that we're trans, if you have, but I definitely had my sexuality questioned by other people a lot at a very early age, and not in a nice way, in a cut that shit out sort of way. But hey, if you're any combo of like marginalization or care about someone with any combo of marginalizations, then you probably know at least somewhat of what I'm talking about, or somewhat of what like can happen when you're not, you know, cis, white, heteronormative, neurotypical, and abled. So the internet. Once I kind of like started to communicate with the internet, like the furry community, the ADBL community, the LGBT community, I felt way more understood. but I still like interacted very little. I wanted to do more, but was scared, and I still am. When we spend so much time thinking, if we didn't do things to like cause trouble or like cause conflict, and if we would just make people as happy as we could and only say good things, then we would never get chewed up, or we would never get harassed, or that sort of thing. So we just fawned and we fawned in real life and online, and hoagie shit, it did not work. And now with COVID and being isolated, and part of the isolation being our own fault, and social interaction outside the internet being very difficult and very straining, and because we've been really used to being dependent on others for a really long time and aren't very good at being alone, it kind of led to us wanting to make YouTube content right now. But like changing and like trying to like relearn how to like be to manage like myself is like growing up again, and it's like a lot of growing pains, and on top of everything else to consider with the world right now, it's a lot. And also we realize that like if we want to create change, we have to say things that like might make people upset. But at the same time, we don't want to be a jerk. Like in our Resident Evil 3 video that releases tomorrow, we value taking care of people and like community. You might even say like, providing help to people according to their need, or having some like lack of hierarchy, so no one's like more important than anyone else. Anyway, I've been a leftist for like only like 2 or so years, and not everyone can or should provide the same thing to the movement, and I spent so long not doing anything and feeling like I couldn't, and only waxing poetically and self-importantly to people who mostly already agree with me on some level, and use my politics as a way to assure myself that me doing nothing was okay because the world like makes me powerless anyway. And decided I didn't want to do that anymore. Duh. And we're making videos to scream into the void a bit. We're making videos to self-actualize a bit, to maybe spread the word about how we're not powerless, and how you aren't either. Like, you watching this video right now aren't powerless. Even if you spent your whole life keeping your head down like we did, but even if you're stuck inside and all you can do right now is like draw or make videos or do something that helps you cope or listen to someone's problems, that isn't bad. Productivity isn't what makes you worth a damn. You don't have to be well-read or highly skilled to help someone. And I hope if you're hearing my words right now, you try to help someone when you can, or you try to give kindness to yourself, or you try to understand someone. And if all you can do is keep your head above water and you can't do any of those things, then it's okay. But like also like don't give up on yourself, and don't give up on like the possibility that like the world can maybe get better, or you can get better. It's okay not to be okay right now or any other time. Have a nice day. Signing off from Tempest of the Fluff Bite system.